Samuel Delany, in an interview following the publication of his 2012 novel, Through the Valley of the Nest of Spiders, describes being an 18-year-old and reading an interview with Nabokov, where the latter is asked if he considers Lolita to be a shocking novel. Nabokov responds that Lolita is not shocking, that what would truly be a shocking American novel is a narrative that follows the life of an interracial couple who get married, have no problems with the law, and grow old together, living a happy, fulfilled life with many children and grandchildren. With this in mind, Delany writes a novel that follows the life of a 17-year-old white man, Eric Jeffers, who in 2007 moves from Atlanta to live with his mother in a small coastal town in Georgia called Runcible. On arrival, Eric meets Morgan Haskell, a black man who lives and works in Runcible's Diamond Harbour. The novel follows Eric and Morgan as they create a life together, living, working, and eventually dying in the early 2070s. Throughout the novel, we observe minor cultural and technological changes as they course through the everyday minutiae of Runcible, yet the large-scale social and political changes that happen in the near future are only felt at the margins of the text. On first impressions, then, the novel can be seen as the fulfillment of Nabokov's challenge to write a mundane, truly shocking American novel. Delany has written a kind of interracial Bildungsroman that has only been given an ever so slight speculative distortion. Yet any banality of description ends here. In the first few pages, we are given a visceral description of Eric defecating, masturbating, and eating his own snot, all simultaneously. A few pages later, we are introduced to Eric's cruising habits, how he explores underpasses and laybys for homeless men to have sex with. Just before arriving at Runcible, Eric and his father stop at a service station. Eric goes into the restroom, where he is propositioned by a huge man who is covered in bright Byzantine tattoos, sunburnt skin, and has missing front teeth. In this pornotopic encounter, the restroom suddenly fills with men, white and black, who Eric proceeds to engage in an orgy with. As Eric sucks the fingers of one of the men, he feels the ineffable understanding of the hardness and history his tongue moved upon. These hands make history. They are working class hands. This is also the episode in which Eric will first meet his future lover, Morgan. Only nobody calls him Morgan. His nickname and preferred name is Shit. Eric's love object is literally a waste product. Eric soon gets a job with Shit as a refuse collector and moves in with him in an area of Runcible called the Dump. As the novel progresses, we are introduced to all sorts of sexual perversions that include eating each other's snot, urinating on each other, drinking each other's piss, and wearing condoms that have been used by other men whilst they go about their day-to-day activity. The Dump is populated by mostly queer black men. From their accents, clothes, and heavily tattooed bodies, we are led to believe that these men are either working class or belong to the so-called lumpen proletariat. These men are made up of populations that contemporary racial capitalism has designated as unproductive, and thus destined to what Neferti Tadiar calls lifetimes of disposability. That is, life that is considered worthless from the perspective of capital, that they are exposed to the sort of structural racism Ruth Gilmore Wilson describes as group differentiated vulnerability to premature death. The Dump acts as a nodal point between the economy of waste disposal, the libidinal economy of eroticized human waste, and the social life of those considered societal waste. Delany is aware of the crushing socio-economic reality that these men face, being part of a surplus population living in conditions of disposability. He has described the novel as a fairy tale, saying the lives these men lead would need some sort of institutional support to be viable. Therefore, all the men who live in the Dump are paid by a gay philanthropic organisation called the Kyle Foundation. The simple Marxian critique would point to the Foundation's funding as the novel's structural impossibility. But I want to suggest the novel has a more productive conversation with Marx if we focus on the way that time is conceptualised in the text. Temporality has already been noted by previous critics as a central concern of the novel. The novel's structure is grafted onto the phenomenological time of Eric's life experiences and memories. Whilst the first 400 pages cover only a few years of Eric's life, as Eric gets older, decades literally disappear within the space of a few paragraphs. Whilst this is an interesting formal experiment in itself, I want to speak about the novel's relationship to labour time and futurity with reference to the more speculative moments in Marx's Grundrisse. In the infamous fragment on machines, Marx discusses a tendency within capitalism wherein technological development increases total social wealth, which, in turn, decreases the amount of labour time necessary for the system to reproduce itself. This decrease in labour time introduces another form of disposability, what Marx calls disposable time. For Marx, this tendency is always battling against a counter-tendency to drag people back into the workplace, to produce surplus value. The Kyle Foundation's funding allows Delany to displace this imminent contradiction, to explore what new social relations may arise amongst those who are forced to live under conditions of disposability and premature death. Marx argues that if the contradiction between value accumulation and labour time was solved, then social wealth could no longer be measured in units of labour time, but would instead be expressed through disposable time and our pursuit of higher activity. Higher activities, one assumes, would include things like reading, writing, and philosophising. Throughout the novel, Eric reads Spinoza's Ethica and tries to glean a meaning of life from its pages. However, Spinoza doesn't necessarily lead Eric to pursue Marx's higher activity, but instead to transvalue everyday life into an infinite Spinoza becoming. Towards the end of the novel, Shit, reflecting on his life with Eric, becomes tearful and says, "Every once in a while it hits me how fucking amazing it is that I got you. I mean, you're all I ever wanted. And when I'm messing around with somebody else, it's like you're always telling me, from that book of yours, I'm fucking with another part of you, or the world, or the universe, and, I guess, God." Eric's reading of Spinoza makes him aware of how his socio-sexual practice was always already a Spinoza's practice of becoming. That from the perspective of Spinoza, even shit and piss are expressions of God's love. Eric's reading also reorientates his life towards social reproduction of those who have been designated expendable by capital. As Jordi Rosenberg has pointed out, food is a recurring theme throughout the text. Eric is always cooking for people. Every year he has a cookout where he cooks a huge bowl of chili con carne that is free for all the homeless men or anyone else who wants to eat it. The secret ingredient in the chili is semen, although as Eric gets older, he stops masturbating into the food. Set free from the shackles of capitalist production, the dump becomes the realisation of C.L.R. James's favourite dictum of Lenin's, his desire to see a communist society where every cook can govern. In so doing, the novel brings forth the speculative dimension in James's own dialectical optimism, wherein an analysis of working class activity allows us to catch a glimpse of rays of light that emanate from the future in the present. This future in the present is registered in Eric's own unconscious. Eric remembers a dream where he sees a cliff slope covered in trash bags. As he looks closer, the bags begin to take human form, as disembodied mouths, legs, breasts, and penises. As he walks through the eroticized trash forest, he comes to the realization that he is wandering through a trash heap city. Later, Eric is overcome with an urge to tell shit what they have been building together. What they have been building is a new community and a new city. Eric Spinoza's journey is one of queer social reproduction, of the reproduction of social life from the conditions of disposability from which a new city would arise from the trash heap of history. Maybe the future of communism isn't a fully automated luxury, but the social reproduction signified in a huge pot of communal chili with a hidden ingredient, the chef's cum.